We have risen from the ashes to school the masses. Hello, everyone. Welcome to another edition of the Scholars Wrestling Show, episode 376. I'm your man behind the microphone, Scholar Jeff. Joining us, as always, the undisputed scholar himself, the one and only Scholar Tarek.
You got to get the introduction right. This is like the first undisputed scholar, because I'm more, as I say many times, I'm no longer on top of that mountain by myself. I got my tag team partner, the reigning, defending Scholars of Wrestling heavyweight champion of the world, Scholar Brian. Oh, no. Undisputed Scholar Brian.
Yeah, what he said. Scholar Brian, how you doing tonight?
Very well. I understand that I wasn't here last week, but I'm going to take this time to bask in the glory of, once again, being Brian Two Belts and cementing my place. And cementing my place as the undisputed scholar by, as soon as actually becoming an undisputed scholar, I defended my championship at AEW Revolution. And not only that, became the only two-time and quite potentially the last two-time two-belt winner. So yes, I am feeling very good this evening, even though some of the topics we are talking about not so quite.
Oh yes, this week, for better or for worse, has been quite the momentous, noteworthy week in professional wrestling, and we're going to get into all of it this week, kicking things off in a little segment we like to call Backstage News.
Indeed, we shall go once again, peek behind that curtain and just see all the really sad things that came out of this week in our little segment in
Backstage News. That sucks, man.
Yes, as you've no doubt heard in the professional wrestling world by now, earlier in the week, we tragically lost the one and only Scott Hall, aka Razor Ramon, due to health complications resulting from a broken hip and surgery. There's all kinds of stories about 3 heart attacks and just not being able to recover. And even more stories that have come out in the days rather, after his passing. We just found out that right as Monday Night Raw was going on the air. And yeah, I think by now the whole world, the whole wrestling world and beyond, has heard about the tragic passing of Scott Hall. So let's get right into it. Scott Hall, what do you remember him for? Any particular memories you've got with Scott Hall? And what do you think his legacy in the business is going to be going forward?
It's one of these things. Let's face it, okay? If you didn't have Scott Hall as the guy who first came in to WCW and started that whole invasion angle that became the NWO, if it wasn't Scott Hall that did that promo, was like, you know who I am, but you don't know why I'm here. It's like, I'm not sure if that angle works with anybody else. Okay, that angle is what got me into wrestling. It's like the first thing I was told about. it was like my buddy came up to me, hey, you got to see this, and it was it was him coming out, basically declaring war, but you didn't really know if you didn't really know what was going on. It was just him coming out. They didn't announce he was signed or anything. It's just him coming out of the crowd and him just being like, you don't. If you want a war, you've got one. It's like that kind of deal, and it's like he was the first guy that made being a heel cool. Okay, he called himself the bad guy. Okay, but you really couldn't help but like him because he just oozed cool. You know what I mean?
Mhm.
And all that. And also at the end of it, okay, his entire story, it's just like a tale of redemption that you would see out of a movie. Okay, because if you look back at news from like 10 to 15 years ago, okay, if we were a podcast back then, okay, we should have been talking about this about 10 years ago. Okay, legitimately, like this should have, if he kept living the way he was living like 10, 15 years ago, okay, we should have been talking about this then. Okay, he burned every bridge that he had except for like 2 or 3. And those 2 or 3 actually propped him up and got him to the place where he got all his friendships back, he got his family back, he got his health back. Okay, and we're at the point now where we're celebrating a life that we thought was going to be done like 10 years ago. So it really sucks that it happened the way it did. And don't think it's not common, because it actually is. In people that age, if blood clots, heart attacks from surgery, it happens. It's the way life is. But the fact that his demons didn't get him is what we're celebrating here. That he was able to get 10 years out of his life that really he should have never had. If we're talking about how he lived his life while he was actually wrestling. So thank you for introducing me to wrestling, Scott Hall. Thank you for the memories you gave, and thank you for that amazing Hall of Fame speech that inspired many to get rid of their demons and live a better life, in the hopes of, when you do pass, getting the flowers that you deserve.
Do you want to go ahead, Fool, or do you want me to go first?
I just really don't have too much to say, other than just he's one of the big benefactors that made me a huge fan of the Intercontinental Championship. Because for most people who watch this show, that I'm a huge Intercontinental Championship fan. I love that title. I love what it's supposed to represent. And him and the one real solid factors are basically his ladder matches with Shawn Michaels, one at WrestleMania and the next one at SummerSlam, the rematch. It was basically those matches that just solidified my fandom of that championship. And he was one of the big he was only one of the only real benefactors of me really trying to follow what was going on in WCW. Because like we said, Jeff, you're the WCW guy. I've just been WWE for almost all of my wrestling fandom. And he was just a big benefactor of that. Just like I said, just what he's done with his matches with Shawn Michaels and just what he was able to do with Kevin Nash and Hulk Hogan creating the New World Order, and essentially being one of the big factors that made pro wrestling so popular in the 90s. He was without those guys, we wouldn't even have like big benefactors of the Attitude Era like DX and Stone Cold Steve Austin and all that. I do agree with what Brian, it is such a relief that this discussion is not because, as Brian put it, his demons came back to haunt him. It was just pretty much pretty much just an accident. It's just his body was just messed up, and the surgery just got him heart attacks. It's really sad. And we were just hoping he would able to just wake up from the being in the state that he was in, on the life support he was on. We were really hoping for the best, but also there was a part of me that's thinking, I'm not sure he was going to be able to, as some put it, kick out of this one. And he truly did leave his mark in pro wrestling for lots of people. And he may have had his demons in the past, but he was able to overcome them with some help with the people who are closest to him. And if he would, at least, the best thing to say, at least it wasn't his demons that really came and overpowered him. It was just unforeseeable circumstances that that just can't. Sometimes it happens. It sucks. And I also will, thank you for the memories that impacted me as a wrestling fan, building the wrestling fan we see today. And for that, thank you, Scott Hall, and enjoy the what are the people calling it? The Heaven Wrestling Organization.
I don't know. I haven't heard any sort of specific thing about that.
I know they gave it. I know some people gave it a name.
He walked through the pearly gates and immediately threw a toothpick at
Yes.
St. Peter.
Hey-o.
Hey-o.
Yeah.
Before we go any further with my spiel, did anyone happen to catch Sean Waltman's comments on the Wrestling Observer newsletter?
Some of it.
I did
read the whole thing.
I did with the pandemic and everything.
Yeah, there were some.
He did start drinking again.
Oh, I didn't see that.
I'm not sure.
I think it maybe came out a day ago.
Yeah, I'm not sure how heavily or anything, but it's like it was the pandemic. Okay, you can't get on him for that. He was isolated, and he was isolated and all that. So that's one of those things where it's like, it's unfortunate, but I don't really fault him for that.
No,
that
absolutely
kind
not.
that kind of deal. And the it also sucks that apparently he fell and was basically useless for days before when he actually broke the hip. Like he fell and was useless for days, and it was only because Waldman and Nash called up Page to go check on him that they found out that he fell.
Yeah, that again, that this to me doesn't strike me at all about that man's personal failings or anything like that. Because again, he's someone like that. If you've got a problem that big, you're always gonna be in recovery. It's just the way it is. And again, given how devastating all of the lockdowns and all the everything surrounding COVID, so it was devastating just enough to the regular person, but to someone
Mhm.
who's vulnerable to that kind of thing, part of me after hearing that was like, the man never even had a chance. Which again, coming from my perspective as a wrestling fan, this one really hurts in particular, not because I was particularly a big fan of Scott Hall, but because from my perspective, when I first started watching, he always seemed to not just be like this, unflappable professional tough guy statesman, but again, just how big and jacked he was, just how someone can go from that to his frail state that he was at during his later years. It's no pun intended, it's extremely sobering that all of us are here by the grace of God, and we're just, as far as a wrestling fan in me, I see it as nothing less than a miracle that the Scott Hall that we saw at his worst got that extra decade of imparting knowledge, of telling those stories, of being grateful, of living with his loved ones and his son, who I just remembered exists. Cody Hall is still out there taking bookings last I checked, and that's just like, it's chilling.
Mhm.
But at the same time, I can't help but be grateful for stories like that, where I got to hear stories and hear him talking shop, and I realized, like Jake Roberts, a sober Jake Roberts is a dangerous Jake Roberts, and like him, Scott Hall, a sober Scott Hall is one of the most cunning minds I've ever heard in wrestling. And I'm just glad he was around just long enough to impart that wisdom and experience to the next generation and do all the interviews he did. So
Yeah,
from
because
me
it's
to
like
yeah,
I did not know before everything was happening with the heart attacks and all that, and him being on life support. I did not know that it was him who was like, "Hey Sting, you ever seen The Crow?" That's it.
just
And
casual.
just casual, just like, yeah, I think that might work for you. And
Surfer colors.
instead of the purple and the yellow face paint, just like, hey, bring the Crow thing into it. And it's like, yeah, what you see from Sting now, that's Scott Hall. That's it.
Yeah,
So it's
so
like, when it's like a lot of the major things that we have in wrestling now, you can attribute to Scott Hall.
Mhm.
yeah, so it's a real shame, but at the same time, I'm glad he got some of his flowers when he was alive and when he was entering the Hall of Fame with his friends. But also now, the rest of the wrestling world and the fan base will really be able to cement that everything else that he is and was and ever will be on a plaque. And just recognize the man and honor the man for who and what he always was.
Mhm.
So we join the rest of the wrestling fan base and saying, thank you, Scott Hall. See you on the other side. Until then, we're saying farewell to the bad guy.
Good luck and good night.
And with that moment of silence out of the way, let's move on to some better news subjects for the time being. Because as of just today, really, in the world of Ring of Honor, a dream match is coming to light. Is just announced today that Briscoes and FTR for the Ring of Honor World Heavyweight Championship is going to actually happen at Super Card of Honor. And I'm just going to put that out here right now. I called this one. I called it as soon as the purchase was announced. We're getting FTR and the Briscoes at Super Card of Honor. And guess what? I was right. Thoughts?
Well, it's like, of course you were right, because even before they were, even before Tony Khan announced that he bought ROH, they were doing the Twitter promos between each other. So you knew at some point FTR and the Briscoes were gonna face each other. It was just whether it was going to be in AEW or in some kind of independent promotion. Okay, but as soon as Tony Khan announced that he bought ROH, but then it came out that Warner didn't want
Yeah, I
the
was just about to say.
Briscoes. It came out that Warner didn't want the Briscoes on TNT or TBS because of comments that they made years back.
Yep.
Not very good. But at that point, it's like you knew it wouldn't be AEW, but ROH. Okay,
Made perfect sense.
as soon as they announced ROH, I'm like, okay, that's where it's gonna happen. It's gonna happen then, because it's like that's not on a major network. That you don't have to worry about sponsors with that one. So yeah, now you get the dream match, FTR versus the Briscoes, and it's really it's going to be great either way, and I can see it going either way. That's the best thing. Like this is a match like you cannot predict. I don't know what's going to happen here.
Now I kind of want to bring out a scholar's quick talk on this subject for you.
Fire
gentlemen.
away.
With all the rumors and hinting that FTR did on Dynamite, do you think FTR is going to debut Bret Hart as their new manager at the Super of Honor?
I don't know if it's gonna be full-time manager. I don't know if it's gonna be full-time manager, but I would not be surprised at all if they get him for a one-off during that particular match.
Yeah, if that kind of answer counts as a yes, then I'd like to say yes. I think it's likely. Actually, I take that back. I want to say it's absolutely possible, but something about it just doesn't seem likely. So if Brian is saying yes, I'm going to say no. Is it possible that I'm wrong? Yes. Am I hoping I'm wrong? Yes. No. My life is not that contrary, sir. For this one, I'm going to say, I'm just going to go with no. I just don't think it. I just don't think it's likely.
That it'll be at that show, or in general?
Just in general, like one thing that's jumping to my mind, not that it's the final thing by any means, but if that was to happen, I've got a feeling that it would sort of drown out just Bret Hart coming in and just like following the FTR out to the ring. I feel like that might be a bit of an overshadow when really the focus should be on FTR and the Briscoes locking up for the first time. That's the focus. If he does end up being their manager for a while, my guess is it's got to be on AEW television to attract even more viewers and get more sort of jaded eyes on their product. I just don't see it happening in Ring of Honor. Short answer.
Unless
That
it
being
happens
said-
beforehand and he just shows up with them anyway, because like, oh, he's already with them, so might as well just have him show up with him.
Like I said, it's certainly possible. I just don't think it's all that likely enough for my taste to say to give it a confident yes. But that being said, just this was the palate cleanser that I think we all needed. The dream matches happening, and in Ring of Honor rules, like it's not only is it's a freshness for FTR and a fresh new match period, but I feel like this is the kind of match that needs to happen in order to refresh Ring of Honor as a whole. That I can see this match being the sort of pace setter for the rest of Ring of Honor's next era. And personally, I think it's going to result in a hell of a lot of great new matches. We're going to see some great new talent, and I'm all excited for all of it.
All right. Well, there you have it.
I know, not a lot of depth there beyond, oh boy, good match, big match, But
Well,
hey,
that answers my
it's going to be
scholar's,
tremendous.
quick talk. So I take it
Here's
as a
your
win.
answer. And now for a little other subject. Again, not the biggest one, but certainly a very exciting one for one of us. It was announced by PW Insider that one Claudio Castagnoli has been trademarking the letter pattern of CSRO, whether you want to call it CSRO or Cesaro, or basically the thing he had on his tights for a little while, for the purposes of merchandise, wrestling, and coffee branding. Merchandising.
What's that?
Yes.
Because it's like we all know we all know what that stands for. We all know what that means. We just know that he can't actually use the name because the WWE owns it. But it's
The logo, yeah.
yeah, it's like there's really not much to say about this. It's just like I'm glad he's getting it's one of those things where I would have liked to see him go back to Claudio Castagnoli or whatever, but it's one of those if he's keeping his brand from WWE but branching it out in different ways and taking care of the trademarks or whatever, then that's cool. All that matters in the end is that wherever he ends up, okay, we get the guy from the PWG, from the Chikara, from all those, from the Kings of Wrestling. We get that guy. Okay, hey, maybe we get the Kings of Wrestling back out of this. We get Chris Hero.
That was one discussion that was brought up ever since he left WWE. So
yeah, it's
possible.
like one of those. It's there's all kinds of ways that you can go about this now. I'm just glad he's getting out ahead of everything and trademarking his own shit. That's it.
Trademarking for his sweat coffee.
I was gonna say if this means that, I was just double checking. Apparently, the dark roast coffee that we tried a while back, that's still available on the Legal Speed website.
It's like
So if you want,
he still drops little bits of his sweat for that sweet, sweet taste.
and you just had
It's
to.
like, we don't need the creamer. He already added his delicious sweat to the coffee to make it so.
Okay, I
fresh
think
and
we're done
sweet.
here. Until we hear any more news, I think we're completely done and over with by
We-
now.
we-
I will
we-
never be done with it.
Well, you won't, but I will.
Leave her-
Moving on.
Oh, I love them.
Hey, Torek. Okay. Keep your towels off camera, okay? That's
Oh,
it.
trust me, it's already off. It's been off camera.
Oh, Jesus.
Speaking
We
of
all know. We all know where it is.
speaking of things that are off camera, we couldn't go any further without recognizing a little bit of silliness from the professional wrestling world. You brought it to my attention first, Fool. It's the rules for the new Change Your Narrative promotion.
I feel like we have to bring this up at least once on this show. Once the rules of really came out from EC3's Instagram, I read them and I'm just like, this is quite possibly the most ridiculous thing I've ever seen. We have to at least bring it up just for like a couple minutes on the show, just to laugh at it.
All right. So on that happy note, I think you've got right in front of you, Fool. Why don't you just, for those of us who have not seen it or heard it, roll down the list of quote unquote rules for Change Your Narrative.
Control your narrative. Got to get
Change
it
your
right.
narrative, control your narrative, leave your narrative alone, whatever. I don't care.
All right, the rules. Rule 1, you're in control. Rule 2, you are in control, because there was all caps. Rule 3, fights end when you tap out, get knocked out, can't stand, or quit. Sanctioned matches can end by a pinfall. Standard professional wrestling rules apply for sanctioned matches. Chaos ensues in the project pit. I cannot wait to see what that is. No hashtag super kicks. No hashtag. I'm just assuming that this is just like
Hope
top-
suicidas.
Tope suicida. It's basically one of those leaping body presses out of the ring.
that's what I assumed it was. And no hashtag Canadian destroyers. Okay. Rule 6.
It's what Bad Bunny did to John Morrison.
No, really, Brian? I had no idea what a Canadian destroyer was. You just blew my mind.
Well, considering that you looked like a
No, I'm just confused on just why take Canadian destroyers out?
Once upon a time, there was a little
why take
Canadian man
anything?
named
What-
Petey Williams.
What,
This is like-
why?
Come on, who
Why
wants it? Who
take-
doesn't want to see?
Why do these guys want to take everything good out of wrestling?
I love that. The Canadian destroyer is such a great move. I would just, a part of me would love to have seen it done on Braun Strowman. Just
Oh,
the,
yeah,
the
that
biggest
could-
Canadian
that
destroyer,
would
the
work.
biggest Canadian destroyer I've ever seen.
Yeah.
Rule 6. The fight isn't with your opponent. It's with yourself. That's fucking deep, man. Rule 7. Fights will go on as long as they have to. I don't know why it's with 2 O's, but okay. Sanctioned matches hit their times. Okay.
So in other words, they will go on for as long as they have to until they don't.
Yeah.
Seems legit.
And rule 8, the final rule. If you want to hashtag control your narrative, you have to fight. Fight.
I'll tell you
Need to
what.
fight.
I've
Fight!
only the first comment I saw someone post about this on Twitter summed it up perfectly in my eyes. I think it said, again, this is not a direct quote, but it was like, this seems like it was written for, this is someone who watched Fight Club but does not understand Fight Club.
I've heard that as well. I didn't know it was someone commented at that, but that's what I've been hearing. Just
It's true though,
people's
like
response to it.
these,
Yeah.
this whole thing reads like something is supposed to be edgy and new, like the next Ring of Honor with like their code of honor when they first got established. But at least with the code of honor, it was short and sweet. It was
I'm
to the point.
my immediate
It was clear to understand. This is just like a bunch of edgy nonsense that makes absolutely no sense in the context of this or any other professional wrestling promotion.
I looked at
Yeah.
this. My immediate response to this was just, oh my God, they're doing their own version of Raw Underground.
And that's how it feels. Like at
That,
first,
like,
I was
oh my
really
goodness.
excited about this for like, okay, people who did not got kind of screwed by the professional wrestling system. They're gonna add something to the equation. This could potentially be good. But it's just a bunch of ego-driven nonsense where people are betting on themselves and it's not paying off.
Yeah.
For the sake of controlling your narrative, like
I cannot wait for
you're
this
not in
first show.
control. That someone's got to make the booking decisions. Oh, and there's no rules except you can't
All the
do
8
all of
rules.
these.
Except the rules I just
You
read.
don't have to. Fights will go on for as long as they need to, unless you can't do them anymore. In which case, you must absolutely follow the rules and hit your times at all.
And
Look,
it's one of those things where the only thing you think when you read these rules and you see who's involved, it's like, now I see why you were let go.
it's
It's
tragic,
like,
but it's
now-
there's
now
this
I
whole
understand.
thing.
I understand completely why you are no longer where you were before. It's like this
Wasn't it
this
just
has
because his
nothing to
contract
do
was
with
over that?
wrestling. This has nothing to do with wrestling. It doesn't. It's this whole thing, as much as I hate to bring this into it, okay, this whole thing by everybody here, it's a political statement. In a wrestling promotion was made as a political statement that nobody gives a shit about.
And I
and
think
just
that's really the
ju-
whole big point here. Even if it's a statement to someone who A is not listening and B whose opinions don't really matter. The fans opinions are the only one that matters. And right now, they're doing it for themselves. They're not doing it to appeal to the fan base. They're doing it to stroke their own egos and to bet on themselves without having any actual knowledge of what they're doing. Oh boy,
Yeah,
that triggered more of a rant than I thought it would.
this is gonna last a year, and then they're going to be begging for jobs at promotions that will no longer hire them because of the stupid shit they were trying to pull on their own indie promotion. That's it. This is gonna
shame.
ruin careers. This is gonna ruin careers that there are a few that work there that are already ruined, and we all know who I'm talking about. That's it.
Who else is a part of this? Seriously.
Austin
Other than
Aries.
Well, oh yeah, okay. Other than those main 3, who who?
Supposedly Eric Redbeard was gonna be in on this at a certain point. Killer Cross
again-
was advertised for one, but now he's doing
yeah.
promos for for New Japan, which is a much better place for him anyway. The indie guy Paro, I saw his name floating around, but it's just like
All
to
guys
Eric-
who have said
Eric
stupid
Redbeard.
shit. Oh,
To Eric
all
Redbeard,
guys-
run, man,
yeah.
run. Get away from
no,
there.
it's like exactly. His name got involved with that, and immediately afterwards, he was showing up in AEW for. That's it.
Boy,
It's like,
this
oh,
is
I'm gonna wrestle EC3 and Braun Strowman at a indie show that no one gives a shit about, and then I'm gonna show up on AEW and have one of the best matches on and have one of the greatest matches on a buy-in show ever. That's it.
Exactly.
so
Yeah.
on that
And-
on that note, before we move on to something else,
I'm
if you-
glad I brought this up. I'm glad I brought it up to this conversation because I love this. I love our reactions to this. just how much it brought a rant out of Jeff.
Yeah. But just to sort of taper and put a fine point on this so we don't end up going for another hour. If I'm going to invoke a scholar's quick talk of my own,
Oh no.
if you have to change one thing about control your narrative, just one thing to make the show better than it is now, what would you do? It's not quite the quickest of the scholars quick talk. I'm going to put the question out there anyway. Tarek, I'm pitching it to you. What would one thing you would change about CYN?
Hmm. Deleting it from their minds to begin with.
Okay.
Oh.
Hey,
I'm kind of serious. I'm kind of joking, but I'm like 50-50 on that one. In all seriousness, though, if I were to change one thing, I don't. There's too many things to really think about. Really, in all honesty, all I could think of is just change your rules. Think of rules that actually doesn't make you look like complete morons when trying to start a wrestling company.
honestly, that's what I was originally going to say. Just toss out those stupid inane edgelord rules. But honestly, I'm the more I think about it, the more I would be inclined to side with you, Tarek. And in all sincerity, like for what they're going for, it's not enough to. It doesn't seem like enough to make it form its own indie wrestling organization. It seems more akin to a faction in the wrestling world, consisting of maybe 3 people, no more than 4, and then just have this group called Control Your Narrative, consisting of EC3, Braun Strowman, and Austin Aries, or whoever else they want to do. Put them in a bunch of trios matches with people from all around the wrestling world. Make it an sort of a rebel, edgy organization that can show up anywhere. Put them there. No more ridiculous rules. If you do have the rules, just make it a part of their edgelord gimmick. But just get rid of this stupid. CYN is not going to be a thing. Stop trying to make it a thing.
No,
I don't know why, but I'm just picturing it just look wise as the wrestling organization, whatever it was in the Sam Raimi Spider-Man movie. That's how I'm just looking how it's gonna look.
That's an insult to Sam Raimi and Bruce Campbell.
Because here's the problem. Okay, you raise that scholar's quick talk. What would you change? It's like if this company was made in good faith to be a wrestling organization, then I would be, then I would give it the look that it deserves, to see what it could change, and to see what to see how it could become its own thing, and maybe but it was never it's not supposed to be that. It's really not. It's not supposed to be a wrestling organization. Don't listen to what they're telling you. It's exactly what we've been calling it. Okay, it's nothing but a political statement. Okay, it's a bunch of people who have said and done stupid shit, who got fired by the companies that they were working for because of the stupid shit that they did and said. And here they are, putting on a show that, for all intents and purposes, is allowing the stupid shit that they said and did.
Well, yeah,
on those
they
shows.
started it, so of course
So
they're allowing it.
so it's one of those. I'm not trying to see it be better. I don't want it to be better. I want it to go away. And that's it. And it's one of those things that there's no business for it being here. I don't need this. I don't need to see them go into a room where they're gonna cut promos that I'm never gonna see. It's a rant room, okay? And it's just they walk into that room and we never see the end product. Fuck that. No. Okay. If I don't need to see it. It's stupid. It's done. It's played out. I don't want to see it. You did one show. It was fucking useless.
Wasn't there like
And-
only 20 people who showed up at that first show?
From what I heard,
Yeah.
yeah, not the best
Yeah,
turnout.
it's one of those. No one gives a shit. Move
Hell,
on.
it's
Get out of here.
It's the wrestling
I'm done.
organization that will show up at a mall.
Yeah. Move on. Get on with your lives. Find a job. Not that anyone will have you at this point. And move on.
Well, from that to one last little bit of delight and goodness in the wrestling world. I got what I wanted. We have a new AEW Women's World Champion in Thunder Rosa. And as was the total polar opposite of what we saw from her entrance at Revolution, she came in full face paint, full attire in her hometown crowd, and it was just it was a genuine good feel good moment, ending a very long prestigious championship streak from Britt Baker for the title.
And a
And after the
mariachi
kind
band.
of and the mariachi band, this entrance had everything. The match had everything. It was everything we expected it would be, and it delivered. And it was a great way to sort of inject some joy into this very bleak week in professional wrestling. And I enjoyed it very much. Did you guys happen to catch this match?
Oh, of course I did.
Yeah. Yeah.
I have a question though. I have a question.
What's that?
It's not a scholar's quick talk per se, but what did you guys think about the I know the big discussion that came out of this was basically the size of the ring, how it was a smaller ring just so they can have pretty much a cage set for the 18-inch ring.
I'll tell you what,
Like 2
I
foot,
didn't really
whatever.
notice it. I don't think it
Here-
really made
yeah.
that much of a
It-
difference.
They
I'm sure if
essentially
I
made
were
it
to
a
see it
Hell
with
in a
the cage
Cell.
up, yeah.
They essentially made it a Hell in
Yeah.
a Cell, but without a top.
It really didn't make a difference to me because it's like when you think about it, okay, standard cage matches, even if the ring was different, okay, it really didn't change anything for me.
It's just people noticed that the ring, even before
Yeah.
the match
It-
was, that they noticed
it-
is it me or does the ring look smaller? And yeah, it definitely was noticeable. And then you see why, and you're just like, oh, okay, I get it.
Yeah, it's one of those things where it's like, yeah, the ring was smaller, but it helped out with what they were trying to do with the
Mhm.
match. And if that's and
It was
and
just
if it
distracting for the rest
actually
of the
helps,
show.
if it actually helps the match, which is the big match on your show, which is the main focal point of your show, and you're doing a big thing, which is ending a long title reign and giving it to someone who's been chasing it for a year now. Because I think it's been a year since the first match that they had, the Lights Out match, right?
I think so, yeah.
Yeah.
Britt Baker has
So
had
it's
that
like-
title for a long time. My God.
So it's one of those, the size of the ring doesn't really matter to me. I feel like it's another one of those things where it's like people are trying to find things to nitpick about AEW about.
Oh, I don't look at it. It wasn't a nitpick for me. I was just wondering if you guys noticed it.
Yeah,
Because it's
like
definitely noticeable
it
for
was
the
very
show.
noticeable. Yeah,
Yeah.
it was very noticeable. No doubt about that.
Didn't take
But
anything
it's
away
like-
from the show.
That this was exactly what it needed to be. Okay, it's like, let's face it, after Revolution, we all knew what was gonna happen here.
Hmm.
We
Oh, of course.
we all knew that Thunder Rosa was winning it here. We all knew that Thunder Rosa was gonna be the one to dethrone Britt Baker. It was just a question of when it was gonna happen. And when it didn't happen at Revolution, we knew it was gonna happen in her hometown. So
Exactly.
so it's like there was no doubt going into the main event that Thunder Rosa was going to win. But it was like, once again, okay, these two women go above and beyond. They didn't need to do any of that shit.
But they did it anyway,
to,
and it was awesome.
it's like they didn't need to do any of that to have a great wrestling match and to have a good and to have a good title change. But it's like they went above and beyond, and that makes me enjoy it so much more because it's like everything is earned at the
On
end.
that
At the end
note,
of that match.
On that note, here's one final Scholars Quick Talk for the rest of you. Given everything that we've seen, who is Thunder Rosa's next challenger for the women's championship? Go.
Fucking hell.
Don't everyone answer all at once.
Who I don't know who's the next one, but who I want to see have a match with Thunder Rosa is Ruby Soho.
Good call. Scholar Brian, what do you think?
See, that's the problem because it's like there's plenty of faces
Hmm.
like Ruby Soho and all them that I could see, but it's like who would be the heel to go on a pay-per-view? And it's
Oh,
like
Jade
the
Cargill.
only one I feel is ready is Jade Cargill, and I don't know if they go that route yet. I don't
I
know
don't think
if
they'll
they
go
do
that
the
route
double.
either.
Exactly. So it's like I got.
I was gonna say, it seems like Jade Cargill's kind of got her own thing going.
I don't
Once
think
she
they'll
loses-
keep Jade Cargill. I don't think they'll have her win both belts.
No, not
No, I don't
yet.
see- I
Yeah,
don't see that
it's
happening.
just one of those. Who as a heel could you build up?
I'm gonna say Nyla Rose. She's been racking up the wins on AEW
It's
Dark.
true.
They can easily
I
pull
could see it.
the cord on her and just be like, oh yeah, hey, guess what? The native beast is still stomping around on Dark. Uh-oh, she wants gold. There you go.
Dark.
Honestly,
That actually counts.
no, it's like honestly, honestly, I think that's the only one that could work right now.
Oh, right.
That
yeah.
would actually make sense.
That's why it's my pick.
Yeah, it's like they need to. I mean, you could bring in Jamie Hayter, and what's her name?
Reba or Rebel?
Reba.
Rebel.
You could have them be cannon fodder in the aftermath. But I mean, those are the only ones you've built up as bad guys, as heels, other than Jade Cargill, and Jade Cargill is on her own path at the moment.
Yeah, Jade Cargill is
I mean,
for
you
later,
could-
I think.
I mean, you could throw the bunny in there if you really want to, but it's like that would be a random one. But it's like, yeah, it's
I think
one
that's
of
a filler feud.
it's one of the three. It's Jamie Hayter, Rebel, or Nyla Rose. Those are the only ones that you could possibly do at this point and make sense. If you just want a good match, then yeah, I'll say Ruby Soho. Maybe Chris Statlander, throw them in there.
All right. And on that delightful note, those are our thoughts and reflections on this week in professional wrestling. Now is the time we pitch it over to you, our fellow fans. What did you think of this week in wrestling? What's your favorite Scott Hall memory? Let us know all this and more all across the internet, YouTube comments, Facebook posts, and our personal favorite, the Twitter machine, starting at Scholars OW for all the latest episode uploads every single week. Or if you want to join the conversation yourself, you can always check us out on our personal Twitter accounts. Fool, where can we follow you?
Before I do that, there is one thing I forgot I wanted to talk about, and that's just hoping that Big E has a speedy recovery with what happened on
yes.
him
Oh,
happened last week, and the story on possibly him having to retire from in the ring. Hoping that's not at all the case. Like from what that what was where's the doctor from? Like from what football team?
I'm not sure what the football team was, but I mean,
Like Seattle.
they
I
said
think?
that
I
it
don't
wouldn't.
know.
They said that it wouldn't require surgery.
And that, but the parts that were damaged is troublesome enough that he may need to step out of the ring. And I hope that it's not as bad as it coming to that. I really hope that he gets just a full recovery of just whatever of all he had, what he got, and that he will step it back in the ring sooner rather than later. And I'm just hoping for a speedy recovery, hoping for the best, especially for someone who's taken a picture with the Scholars of Wrestling Championship. I feel like we have to at least mention it once.
Yeah,
So-
I feel like I feel like if anybody could overcome the injury, it's one of those where I think the doctor is only talking about a worst case scenario.
And I'm hoping that it's not
Okay.
in Big E's case.
It's one of those things where when you say it doesn't need surgery, and it's I'm hopeful that what that doctor said doesn't come true, as does anybody else, because Big
Mhm.
E is a big ray of sunshine. If you ever I don't think you could turn that guy bad guy. I
Oh.
don't think it would
Oh.
work. That's it. But it's just, I understand doctors only talk
Mhm.
in worst case scenario. You never get the best case scenario when you're talking to a doctor. So it
It's just really
so
sad that he has to
it-
miss WrestleMania.
It is, but at the same
it
time,
is.
I feel like with everything we've seen thus far, and again, I've only heard murmurs of one person's opinion, nothing hard and fast yet. All this and more makes me believe that I don't think Big E is retiring. Unless there's some sort of big major complication that would make all the reports.
Mhm.
So as for right now, I honestly feel like I treat it like no news that's yet to be discussed. That's honestly why I didn't bring it up.
As
yet.
I know, yeah, as far as I'm going with it, it's a broken neck. He doesn't need surgery, and he's walking around. He's walking around making funny videos in a neck brace, and I'm that for now, but I have no doubt that we're gonna see him in the ring again. If Edge could get back in the ring again with all the shit that was wrong with his neck,
Mhm.
then I have no issue believing that Big E will be able to pull it off.
And I don't blame Rich Holland at all for what happened. It was an accident.
Yeah.
So
Mhm.
it happens. It's not like he was trying to intentionally hurt it. It just mistimed. That happens in professional wrestling. And I'm just hoping that, and so here you can find me hoping that Big E has a speedy recovery at the Avataric.
After all that, Brian, where can they reach you?
You can find me hoping many things, including Big E recovering, and and grieving for Scott Hall publicly on Atomic Beanpole.
And you can watch me watching Darby Allin launch himself at the Butcher on AEW Rampage right beyond my computer screen at I'm Robbie Rage.
It's crazy
Joining
that,
all
that they aired that so late.
Hey, there's only so much you can do when you're up against college basketball.
Mhm.
But anyway, you already knew that because you know who we are. We're the Scholars of Wrestling, and you have just been schooled. You're welcome.
You're
You're
welcome.
welcome.
See you all next time for more fun.